Nothing. All right, man. We are live in three, two, one. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Chiefs fans. You are listening to Chiefs Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. As always, I'm your host, Jason Seibel, down in San Antonio, Texas. And with me, as always, is my good friend, my buddy, my partner in crime, Chris Kilduff. What's up, Chris?
Not much, just getting used to getting football every week. You go on that sabbatical with no football for so long, and now it's hitting you in every direction. I'm getting excited about that.
I know it's nice to turn on NFL Network and actually have games on instead of like top tenning everything to the infinite degree.
Yeah, top 10 Dave Craig fumbles. That's what we get. That's what we get up here, up in Spokane.
Yeah, top.
They can do a top 400 Dave Craig fumbles.
It's funny, man. It's so true. It's like literally in the off season they top 10 everything. I always get excited in the off season when they start the top 100 players of the previous year because it's a 10-week show and it takes you right up to training camp. It's so nice, and here we are. And actually, training camp's almost over as we record this episode. It's Tuesday evening. And going into Wednesday, Thursday is actually the Chiefs' last practice at St. Joe. Training camp is over. Of course, they're off Friday and Saturday as they will play Sunday in Carolina against the Panthers on national television. It'll actually be on Fox for everyone to enjoy, which is pretty cool that they get a nationally televised game for preseason. So it's actually like their fourth or fifth national televised game for the week or for the year. So. Pretty cool stuff. But, training camp's coming to an end. But before we talk about the Panthers, before we talk about what's going on this weekend, we kind of get into what we normally do on this show, which is, we always discuss the game that was. And the Chiefs had a game last week. it was preseason. A lot of second and third and fourth stringers playing. But it was preseason. Chris, you got a chance to catch it the following morning, Friday morning, which a lot of folks did when they replayed it on NFL Network. What'd you think, man? I mean, how'd you think the boys look?
I think you can't complain. I mean, for a preseason game, I think we did what we needed to do was cycle through some players, show that we can put some points on the board. I mean, that's generally my biggest concern with the Chiefs a lot of the time is there's nothing that ticks me off than getting in the red zone and not scoring points. So, last year, was a year where we did that decent. I think we could do it better. Luckily we had Jamal Charles who fronted, that entire attack the whole year. But it was really nice to see, we had spoke last week about, the three players who you really wanted to see have a breakout game and see that the hype is there. And I felt the three that I named did that. I said DeAnthony Thomas. We had the amazing DeAnthony Thomas run. I think, that's the thing. I think it got voted best play in preseason. So, for the first week. And then Travis Kelce had the long touchdown where we got to see him in the open field. And then I thought the O-line all held together, fairly decently. So that's kind of made me happy.
Yeah, let's obviously the first thing in that we need to break down and we need to talk about is that DeAnthony Thomas run because off the bat, preseason game one, here's this kid that everybody is like, this kid is going to be a difference maker on this team. And special teams, kind of resetting that for a second, that thought. Special teams is extremely important to this Chiefs football team, the way that it's designed. It was very important last year, and I think it's going to be very important this year. And what I mean by that is the field position game. This team, in my opinion, is not built for a 95, 90, 85-yard drive. They're too young. They haven't quite gelled together yet, and they make those little mistakes that have a tendency to bring those long drives to a screeching halt. And I think that we've seen that when they don't get good field position to start a drive. They can do it, and I'm not saying that they're incapable of doing it, but this team is much, much better when it only has 50, 45, 40 yards to go to the end zone. Of course, any team would be, but this team seems to be built on that. It's more of a quick, fast, let's get in the end zone. So here's a guy in DeAnthony Thomas that has the ability, and not just DeAnthony Thomas, but Albert Wilson, who had that big kick return.
First kick return, yeah.
Yeah, 65 yards, I think, is what he went, plus a 15-yard unnecessary roughness penalty for the late hit out of bounds. So you're talking an 80-yard return. I mean, they've got two guys now already in preseason game one who are primed to kind of pick right up where they left off. But breaking down that DeAnthony Thomas touchdown, I've watched it incessantly. I mean, to the point of almost obsession, just to kind of see how he did it. And it's amazing to me because he gets hit by his own player. Chris Owens runs into him, and then the Bengals player runs into him, and he bounces off both of those guys. I mean, that ball, by all rights, probably should have been fair caught. They were right on top of him. And then just that speed that he shows as he comes around, finds that crease, and away he goes. It was something else, man. It really, really was.
Yeah, and if you see a lot of his stuff at Oregon, it's the same way. That he's that type of runner where if you get that guy a crease, man, he sees the opening and just really takes after it. And it's really impressive to, watch. If you watch the second half of that play and just see the breakaway speed. Everyone's running full speed, and he looks like he's in fast forward, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I have talked about him in depth. Of course, you being a Northwest, Pacific Northwest guy, and having really kind of seen this guy develop while he played at Oregon. And for me, he was kind of an unknown when he was drafted by the Chiefs. There it is again. I've got the replay up as he as he comes around and then cuts it upfield. You're not kidding. I mean, they're running at full speed, and he is just moving away from them. It's beautiful. But yeah, and all the highlight stuff that I saw of him, it's like that breakaway speed. It is absolutely amazing to me how he has the ability to just just break out and take off. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it really matters too. I think a lot of the time you get the runners, and there's so much shine. People like DeAnthony Thomas are just getting so much, foresee in that. But the blocking you see there is done really well too. A lot of those guys don't get a lot of the same hype that you get from the runners, but some of the sealing that's going on in the blocking there to kind of create that hole. A lot of the times you get, plays like that are kind of blown up a little bit just because of the contact right after the catch, and so people get off their lanes. But, the Chiefs all last year did a very good job in that blocking, and I think that's really what opened up a lot of the returns that we were the number one rated team for kickoff and punt returns last year. So I think we're going to continue with that.
Yeah, I think we are too. And it's funny that you talk about the blocking. In watching that kick return, the guy that was running right down the field with DeAnthony Thomas the entire way was number one Chiefs draft pick Dee Ford.
Ford, yeah.
Granted, it was just the punter that he was blocking, but I mean,
that's fair. Dee Ford versus punter, yeah.
But a punter can knock DeAnthony Thomas's little butt out of bounds as good as anybody.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, and speaking of punters, special teams, that's across the board our special teams. I think we've had a couple great kickers. I mean, it showed in that game too. I think that in all facets of special teams, I think we're looking really, really good to use our special teams to be a force for us again this year.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that they're on the right track for sure with special teams. Of course, the next player that you talked about in that trio of players that you wanted to watch was Travis Kelce, and he had one or two games in preseason last year before he banged that knee, ended up having a microfracture, undergoing microfracture surgery, which doesn't sound horrible to, I guess, the layman, but I guess it's pretty significant as far as an injury goes. I didn't realize quite how bad it was as an injury, but there were concerns about him even coming back and making an impact this year, but I think he kind of put those fears to rest.
When a guy that big can move like that, I'll tell you what.
Well, I mean, he's a big dude. I mean, I'm 6'4", 250. And so I look at him, he's 6'5", 250, 260, and I'm like, there's no way that I'm outrunning an entire professional football secondary. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, in pads and everything else. I mean, he showed that burst that a lot of us had seen from him watching, college highlight stuff when he was drafted by the Chiefs last year. And really, he's kind of having his rookie year this year, being that he spent the entire season last year in IR. Yeah, what a catch and run, 69 yards. I mean, I think the ball only was in the air probably about 10, 12 yards, so it wasn't like, it was a deep pass from Chase Daniel. It was all him. It was all him. Now, did you do the same thing I did when he made that little dive into the end zone? Did you cringe?
Yes, I was like, how can you come off of an injury and then do that to us? I almost do that anytime anybody does that, though. I'm just like, oh, come on.
I know. Well, I watched it live, man, and I mean, my heart stopped. It was just like, all I could just see was him landing wrong on that little hot dog dive into the end zone.
It always reminds me of the season the Bucks. I think it might have been the season they went to the Super Bowl, but they had Martin Gramatica as their kicker, and he did like after he kicked the field goal, he did like the little Ryu and Street Fighter jumping uppercut move and busted his ankle. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah. But, it's funny. Last week we talked about our favorite football movie, and in that, John Madden was in the movie The Replacements, and he says, "Never do something great if you can't handle the congratulations or the celebration or whatever." So there you go. Don't celebrate if your body can't handle it. So
yeah, we've been. I mean, we've had some minor injury stuff, but man, that would sure be brutal to lose, somebody big again already.
Yeah, the Chiefs have actually been lucky, I think, in the injury department. They've only had, some dings and nicks and scrapes. Big injury news as of today is Eric Berry, I guess, has been diagnosed with tendonitis in his left heel, which is concerning. Obviously, Eric Berry is the most talented, or one of the most talented players on that Chiefs defense. And actually, speaking of defense, we actually have with us right now live former Kansas City Chiefs player and friend of Chiefs Central Radio, Sean Smith. What's up, Sean? Can you hear us?
Hey, what's going on, my man?
All right, there he is, live from Houston. You and the family back from Mexico, Sean?
Yeah, we're back from Mexico. Enjoying, had a nice little vacation, enjoying the weather over there and the water.
Excellent, very good, man. Glad to have you on the show. Thanks for coming along. We'd like to have Sean on with us, off and on throughout the season, kind of get a pro perspective. Sean Smith, defensive lineman extraordinaire, played for the Chiefs for a couple years, played for the Tennessee Titans, also played for the Cincinnati Bengals at one point in time. So. Definitely glad to have his expertise. So, Sean, right off the bat, I'm just going to ask you, have you gotten a chance to watch the Chiefs' first preseason game?
Yeah, I watched it. I think defensively we're going to be all right. Defensive line is going to be good. Linebackers, I think we got to see a little bit what the secondary is going to be like. Hopefully, Sean Smith, the other Sean Smith, will keep playing good, continue to get better. They got Parker in front of him trying to push him. I think that's more mentally. I think he probably end up being the starter, but it all depends. If Parker keep having a strong camp, depends. Got to keep Eric Berry healthy. That's going to be the key.
Yeah, right before you jumped on, Sean, we were just saying Eric Berry was actually Coach Reed in his post practice presser today actually said that he's got tendonitis in that left heel. Which could be a real nagging injury. You got any experience with that kind of an injury at all?
Nah, but I know some people that had it. It's basically going to have to, stay off it a little bit, get the heel cups inserted inside his cleat, or might even get some special cleats made, per se, to help his feet from having the tendonitis, the heel. And I know, I think Brandon Flowers dealt with it a little bit back in 2000 I think, or 2011, one of them years.
Yeah. Yeah, he had that kind of that nagging injury. Now you played on that team with Flowers, and you played with Holly. There's not a whole lot of guys left on this team that were there prior to Dorsey and Reed. Obviously, Tamba Hali is a big one. Eric Berry drafted in 2010, which was your first year with the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, my first year, 2010.
Yeah. Under good old Romeo Crennel, now coaching the defense up down in Houston. So.
Yes, he is doing that. Rack is doing.
Yeah. Rack City's back down in Houston. So you think the defensive line's going to be doing well? What's your thoughts? Kind of looking in the similarities because you played. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. You played the 3 and the 5 technique as a defensive lineman. Is that correct?
Yeah, I played all 3 of them. The 0, the 3. Because I played all 3 positions. It didn't matter.
So what's your thoughts on Poe? I mean, is this guy legit? Is he the real deal?
Yes, I've been thinking he's the real deal. When I came back in 2012 and played, I seen him play. He has everybody was talking about his motor. He has a motor. Thinking a big guy like this, you see, he's a good player. He made DJ even better player, having a big body up there, making plays, and also DJ feeding off of him, making plays.
Yeah, he's obviously with this Bob Sutton defense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. With this Bob Sutton defense, kind of instead of when Rack was coaching up that D, it was more of a the defensive linemen suck up those blocks and allow the rushers to get in there, and with this attacking defense, it seems to be a lot more get everyone in as much as you can, and it's kind of a mode of you can't double team everybody, and so.
Somebody's gonna make a play. Poe, Houston, Ford, Bailey, somebody's gonna make a play, and that's the thing about Sutton defense. Most was not. I don't want to say it just sit and read, but the scheme is 2 different kind of schemes. There's 2 different ways you could run a 3-4. A few ways. Romeo's is not. He had the attack, but it's also a bunch of personnel too. Having guys, in certain spots, whether it's your safety, your corner, D lineman, it all depends. Another big thing people don't understand is a big surprise. I wouldn't even say a surprise is the play they're getting in the secondary with Abdullah. He's making plays for them. That's big for the defense. That's always been the problem. Eric Berry's been good. Kendra Lou was good. But to have depth at the safety position and have a guy that can make plays is tremendous, especially after a guy sat out a whole year of football and come back and play good football and then get a new contract. That says a lot about that guy himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned Kendrick Lewis. Obviously, one of the biggest disappointments in recent history for the Chiefs was them dropping that, that huge lead in the wild card game in January. Looking at the Chiefs secondary thus far, early on in the preseason, do you think we're looking at the same thing all over again?
I wouldn't say that. It's just we're gonna have to make sure guys get back and cover. For the big thing, and I mean, when you look at it, I think so. They gotta, drop back, get in coverage. If you the safety, you the last guard of defense, so you have to be in the back, on the back end. In due time, I think they're still young back there and it's time to mesh. You know what I mean? As they mesh together with 3 preseason games left, everything should be all right.
Let's hope. Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. I mean, we can hope, but I think the biggest thing is we're gonna have to see is Alex Smith is gonna be able to produce what he did last year. We already know what Jamal Charles can do. I mean, as Jamal goes, the team goes. That's the way I look at it.
Well, I think that's the way everybody looks at it. What's your thoughts on Alex Smith? You know, you've kind of been you have been critical of Matt Castle as a quarterback. Not overly critical, but I mean I've seen some stuff on Twitter and whatnot. What's your thoughts on Smith in regards to, you know, what kind of a quarterback he is?
I mean, at San Fran, at first he was a bust, and then he relived his career, and then he came to Kansas City to sum it all up in 2 seconds. I mean, he wasn't doing good at San Fran in the beginning of his career. Then he came along, and then he got hurt and lost his job to, Colin. And then he came to Kansas City and played good, but he also had weapons. You know, Jamal, even Dwayne Bowe. Even though with Jamal carrying most of the load, still, you know, I like the part where how Jamal also held out for Kemp for. Well, he didn't hold out. He had car problems. Had car problems before camp started, but he was there on time and then he didn't miss anything. So that's a plus. You know.
Yeah.
For the Chiefs to be good there, it's having the depth. Having depth. Who's going to back Jamal up?
Well, he's got a couple of guys that are on the roster. Niall Davis showed some spark last year and in the preseason so far this year. Obviously, this kid DeAnthony Thomas is an X factor, and then even Cyrus Gray showed.
It's a break for Cyrus battling Joe McKnight for the last running back spot, I believe. You know, when you look at it, when you break it down, it's all about who's going to play special teams and who can block, who, you know what I mean? With Joe and Cyrus. Niall Davis, Niall's good, pretty good. And then Thomas, he's basically they got drafted him to be the Dexter McCluster. You know what I mean? When you look at it, and that kid got jets. He can move. He made plays at Oregon in college, and I think he's one of those guys that's proven already in the preseason that he can take a kickback.
Yeah, we were just talking about it right before you called in. Chris and I were. Chris, you got anything for our friend here, Sean Smith?
I just have the funner questions, not the technical stuff. You know, I want to know stuff like who's the toughest offensive lineman you had to go against.
Ever period.
Ever period.
I say Larry Allen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that punch is serious. That first punch is serious.
I love hearing the inside stuff like that, just because you hear analysts talk about it, but it's a little bit different hearing it from players.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Down in the trenches, it's a war down there. Playing against offensive linemen, going against 600 pounds plus every week, pretty much every Sunday, every day in practice. There's a wear and tear on your body, on the toe, but I mean, there's a lot of grunt going down there. It's all about the low man win, whoever get the leverage, but this guy's poking you in your eye, doing all different types of stuff, pushing your helmet or trying to just antagonize you to do something dumb to retaliate.
Yeah. And speaking of punches, I had one question I had to really ask was, your boy Brady Quinn got brought on to Miami today.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that? There was never really too much said about that.
I don't talk about the past. I talk about the future and the present. Know what I mean?
Well said, Sean. Well said.
Congratulations to the number 22 pick of the Cleveland Browns going to Miami. Everybody's with number 22 being the pick. But it's interesting. He could get a job, but Tim Tebow can't. And who you think had a better career?
Yeah, for sure.
So
it's interesting. I mean, you're absolutely right, Sean. You're absolutely right. Not to. So here's one for you. I know that you've played against Peyton Manning in your career. Is he truly unbeatable? I mean, in the regular season, we know what a fallacy he is in the postseason, but in the regular season, is he unbeatable?
No, he's beatable. I mean, we beat him before when I was playing for Cleveland, and what was that? We beat him in the. I mean, but he is the
Yeah.
greatest. He's the GOAT. I remember that was my last game playing in Denver, playing against Denver when we got blown out the last game in 2012, and I seen Peyton. It was a play I wasn't even in. I seen Peyton call a defense that we haven't ran since I don't know when, and it wasn't even. And he checked it at the line of scrimmage, checked it the right thing, bam, 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 bam. And when I seen that right there, I said,
Wow.
man, he's the greatest. I forgot who I was talking to, but I was like, yes, he is the greatest. I mean, he's always been great. I played against him numerous times in my career when I played in Cincinnati, Cleveland, um, Kansas City. So, I mean, he's a great quarterback. He knows what he's doing back there as far as controlling the game and finding an open man and also making a no-name receiver into somebody. You know, him and Tom Brady are good at that. It doesn't matter who's out
Yeah,
there. They find a way
absolutely.
they'll make somebody that's an average player into a great player.
It's a true story. It's the the bane of the Chiefs' existence. So as we move into this preseason, Sean, you got any early on predictions of a Super Bowl matchup? Are you willing to go on record with an early Super Bowl prediction? And just to kind of lead off, mine is San Francisco, Indianapolis. That's my early prediction for the Super Bowl.
Oh, Indy, I can see Indy making it to the AFC Championship game, but not to the Super Bowl. Not to the Super Bowl, but I'm not even sold on Denver all the way either, though. I think it's up for
Yeah.
grabs. I'm gonna tell you who my surprise team is gonna be. I got two surprise teams out of the AFC: the Jacksonville Jaguars and the San Diego Chargers.
The Jags, huh? That's bold.
Yeah, I said I go back to you go back to one of my tweets during the draft. I said Jacksonville is going to be a good team, playoff team. Every year is 2 to 4 teams I believe that make it. That didn't make the playoffs the year before go to the playoffs in the next year.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I mean, look at the Chiefs last year. Worst the first 2-14 to 11-5. It could happen.
Yeah, but also the schedule's tougher schedule. I mean, I'm gonna be a realist.
Yeah.
Cut the BS, man. I'm gonna be a realist. I'm tell you, tough schedule. Hey, any given Sunday, you can win. Don't get me wrong, but tough schedule. It's hard. You got to be able to win on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you up to nowadays, Sean? You're not with a team right now. You didn't play all last year. What are you besides hanging out with the fam in Mexico? What are you up to?
Right now, I'm just chilling. I work up at the high school coach of football. Volunteer my services over there, coaching the defense and learning about being a head coach of a football program. So just getting that underway. We started 2 days. Well, I wouldn't call it 2 days. Started practicing Monday. Monday was our first day of practice. Today was the second day, so tomorrow's the third day. Other than that, just enjoying life. My daughters, they track season's over with now, so now one is in soccer and one is into gymnastics. It's gymnastics right now. And that's about it, man. Just enjoying life and ready for the season to really actually kick off. That's about it.
As are we all. Is that a 4A school up there? 5A school?
It's a 5A. It's a 5A.
5A? Okay, yeah. Excellent. Very good. Well, Sean, obviously with that, we wish you the best of luck. And, if it's cool with you, we'd like to check in with you, every couple, 3 weeks or so during the season and bring you on, especially once the regular season starts and really get a.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, more time before it's out, and then might try to make it a daily thing. I'll come on for a couple of minutes and talk, Chiefs about the day before the game, day after the game. See what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good stuff. Well, Chris and I really appreciate your time, Sean. It's great having you on. It's always cool for guys like us to talk to a guy. I mean, you were very well loved, I think, in Chiefs Kingdom. Sean Smith, Big Nasty, as you kind of earned that nickname. Did you know that? Did you know that was your nickname, Big Nasty?
I know people. I heard that before from a few people actually. And I got people call me the deep freezer. I mean, hey, it doesn't matter. I mean, I love to come out the run out the tunnel again in Chiefs Kingdom and play another down for the Chiefs. I loved it. The fans was good, supporting me, and I mean, I had good time in Kansas City.
Well, and I speak, I mean, I think for a lot of Chiefs Kingdom when I say we had a good time watching you. So, Sean, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Chiefs Central Radio, and we'll be checking in with you here in a couple weeks, okay?
All right, cool. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Take care, partner.
Yep.
All right, good friend of the show there, Sean Smith, Big Nasty Deep Freeze from a couple years as a Chiefs player. Also played, like we said, with Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Tennessee. Yeah, good stuff, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's always exciting for me just being, not even a Chiefs fan, but a football fan in general to talk to anybody who's ever, I've been lucky throughout my life to talk to a few, and I'm always excited just to get people's takes on what it's like to actually play in the big show.
Yeah,
so it's got to be just wild. Like, you really probably can't even wrap your head around it as a normal person.
I'm with you. It's got to be one of those things where like you say, yeah, it's just nuts. It's like you don't even think about as a layman, like as a normal fan, what it's got to be like. We can imagine what it's like sitting in the stands watching the game or watching it on TV, but to be down on the field when 70,000 people are screaming, And
it's easy to sit on your couch and criticize, and be like, oh, that piece of crap, he hasn't even gone in and got the quarterback. You know what I'm saying? But to actually be down in the trenches and kind of see what it's like, that's I'm sure just wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before Sean called in, we were kind of breaking down this preseason game. We talked about DeAnthony Thomas. We talked about Travis Kelce. And you had mentioned the O-line, and it's a good transition talking to Sean, who played on the other side of the ball, talking about going up against the O-line. But you mentioned, they stuck together pretty well. And I think that I will agree with you for a good part, majority of it. But, there obviously were a couple of instances where they weren't able to hold the defender out of the backfield, and Chiefs had a couple fumbles. Obviously, the big one, as it pops up on my replay screen right here, was Alex Smith in a very uncharacteristic fumble turnover in the first quarter. I think during the Chiefs' second series, and then
he really didn't have that ball tucked or something. It just kind of popped right out.
Yeah, and it's funny if you go back and you watch the couple of plays preceding that. Eric Fisher, who's moving obviously from the right side to the left side, he was the number 1 overall pick last year, played right tackle. Now he's moving back to his quote-unquote natural position of left tackle. And he, going up against Gaithers from the Bengals, who's a pretty legit pass rusher in his own right, and the first play of the game, he put Gaithers right on his back. I mean, Gaithers watched the rest of the play, literally looking up. But that play, Gaithers just did a quick little move on him and was able to get right past Fisher and get to Smith and cause that fumble. And then, of course, later on in the game, and really, if you kind of count off the count, 3-4 seconds is about all you're going to get as a quarterback to throw the ball, and that was a long 3 seconds that Smith had that ball. So I don't know. I mean, it's tough to put that on the offensive line, but yeah. I mean, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. I mean, you gotta know at least what you're doing with it. You kind of rewatch that play, and Smith looks a bit confused on what he's planning to do with it.
He did. He looked a little panicked. It looked to me like, and again, having watched this game ad nauseum, it looked like he went to 3 reads. Quickly and just kind of panicked a little bit, and then like you said, Chris, didn't have the ball quite tucked away, and got it poked out from behind. So, and then of course Tyler Bray, same situation. He's a kid trying to make this roster.
Sure.
there's no guarantees that he's got a spot on this 53-man roster and trying to extend a play. And that one was tough. If you remember, the play before, he stepped up in the pocket, pulled away from a potential sack, and hit Demetrius Harris for a long, like 30-plus yard strike down the field. And then the very next play, fumbles it and loses the ball. So, but the O-line did show some promise. Guys like Zach Fulton and this kid that they're talking about now, Ricky Henry. Have you seen the latest on him? Andy Reid says he looks like Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah, I saw that.
So there is promise there. There is promise there, but with any unit on the team, and I think O-line probably especially, you've got to really, really, really have that time to gel together, and they need to figure out who their starting five are going to be so they can really have those guys kind of glom onto each other. So, moving forward from that, and actually flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, you mentioned the secondary. What were your thoughts on them?
I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, right off the bat, it kind of made me sick a little bit seeing Dalton hit AJ deep, just because I know that that's always been a big weak point for us, is that deep ball. And I'm hoping they realize that that's an issue and that they're working on that. But I think overall everybody looked decent. I think obviously the interceptions are, that's something that's going to have to be Chiefs football. If we're going to want to win games, we're going to have to do like we did in that first preseason game and have the interceptions, have the special teams touchdowns and stuff like that. I mean, when we could put together 3 non-offensive touchdowns in that game, it's hard not to win a game when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at that final score, 41-39. If you take away the 3 Chiefs non-offensive touchdowns, they lose that game by 19 points.
Yeah.
You put those in, and they win by 2. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was kind of the story, the way it was last year as well. There were games, I'm thinking specifically of the Buffalo game, and maybe even the Philly game, week 3, where had they not had the contributions from defense, they wouldn't have won those games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference between being 11-5 and 9-7. So, and not a playoff team, to that end. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that they're going to have to be very opportunistic with those turnovers. But the two, obviously, we talked about the DeAnthony Thomas. By the way, my fantasy team, I changed its name. It is now Dat a Boy.
Oh, there you go.
You like that? But yeah, you look at those 2 interception returns, the pick sixes. The first one, which was really cool because it came literally the next play, the next offensive play the Bengals ran after Thomas ran that touchdown back, and that's just Sean Smith doing the other Sean Smith, the cornerback Sean Smith, not Sean Smith that was just on the show, but that's just him doing what he does and wrestling the ball away from a wide receiver and pretty much having an open shot to the end zone. Now, the other one, the Malcolm Bronson touchdown, I wanted to touch on that one really quick because that one to me was even better than the Smith because that really showed some football IQ, because if you notice that play, he read and anticipated that play all the way. I mean, that one was really a great football move where he jumped that route.
Oh, yeah, and, that's the stuff you got to look to see. You can be an absolute average cornerback and still get a pick six because it's thrown right to you, But, if you have that sensibility to follow a quarterback's eyes, read a route, and, take it to the house, then that's when you start to become something special.
Yeah, and, it's funny to me, there's always a couple undrafted free agents that raise some eyebrows, usually this time of year, especially when they're really getting a lot of playing time because of the way the preseason is designed. But, obviously talking about Malcolm Bronson, I mean, this kid has a legitimate shot to be something on this team. I mean, I think that the starting free safety spot is going to clearly belong to Hussein Abdullah, but I think Malcolm Bronson really, really has a shot to be something on this team, especially when they start moving into these sub packages.
Yeah, especially for someone who was off my radar. I mean, he looked good. There's a couple guys who I was really impressed with. A couple guys who were kind of off my radar as far as being people who I thought weren't, really going to make the team and performed really well. Freaking Albert Wilson. He was one of those guys that I figured was probably on the cuff for, wide receiver. And I'll tell you what, man, that kid caught absolutely everything that was thrown in his general direction, and he impressed me. I'd give him a spot.
Yeah, in the off season, everybody talked about Wesson Dressler, this kid from Canada that they brought in, and as it looks right now, I don't even think he's going to make the roster. I don't even think he's close to making the roster. I think this Albert Wilson kid who comes in as an undrafted free agent, and he's a small kid. He's 5'9". I think, and I tweeted this out earlier this week. I think he is what everybody hoped Weston Dressler was going to be.
Yeah.
And you're not kidding.
The special team side of things doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy that can return kicks like that? No, I mean that's just going to guarantee him, a solid spot on this roster. But you put a kid like that in the slot or lineup with a double slot with him on one side and the Black Mamba on the other. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. But yeah, what impressed me, really, really impressed me about him, and you just said it, Chris, was the fact that he caught everything that they threw in his direction. That and that's obviously been a huge concern for the Chiefs, in years past, is the ability for their receivers to actually hang on to the ball. And it wasn't just in this preseason game. He has been consistent. All the reports coming out of training camp in St. Joe have shown that Albert Wilson has been a very consistent, very, very consistent player in that. So, yeah, definitely.
The other big one that I felt needs to be touched on, just because I was so impressed by his performance, and he was somebody that was completely off my radar, was James Michael Johnson.
Yeah. Go ahead. Absolutely, talk about him, because he warrants talking about.
I didn't even have a follow up to it. Besides, I watched him, and every single time defensive tackle was happening, if he wasn't the one tackling the person with the ball, he was standing right next to him there in on it. So, to have that kind of depth, is going to be huge for us. Linebacker is a position that you need depth at, and if we can have the talent that we already have there and then have backup players who can come in and be that run stop and, do that tackling in place of them, that's just huge.
Well, you said talking about tackling, he led the team in tackles for that game. He had 8 tackles, and he didn't even come close to being the guy that was on the field the most. Actually, the guy that ended up with the most snaps for the entire game was rookie pass rusher Dee Ford. Yep, who played well. I mean, he put some pressure on the quarterback. Didn't actually get a sack. Had a couple that he had him in his hands, but no, James Michael Johnson, man, this guy's legit. I think at that middle linebacker position, I think Joe Mays is going to get the start next to Derek Johnson just because of the scheme that they're running. But I think that this James Michael Johnson guy comes in on passing downs, definitely. He can really play well in coverage. The one play in particular that I'm thinking of was the play that set up the DeAnthony Thomas punt return, was the screen pass on 3rd and long, where he split the 2 defenders that were supposed to block on that screenplay and blew up the law firm Ben Jarvis Green Ellis before the ball. I mean, right as the ball got to him, not before. I mean, just timed it perfectly so he didn't get the flag thrown. And just a great play, great heads up play. Diagnosed it, broke it down, and went in and did what needed to be done. So. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're spot on with that one. He is definitely somebody that needs to will hopefully continues to play at a high level and gets a spot on this roster. Like I said, the secondary, I think they're going to need some help. The linebacking core. D Ford, I mean, did you like what you saw from D Ford? Is he as advertised, do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad they gave him some downs, Take the kid, get him in there, get him, use the preseason, who cares if he gets the sacks and stuff like that? Of course, you'd like to see him, but get him accustomed to the level of offensive lineman that he's going to be dealing with. Yeah. The more he knows and the more variables that he understands by the time the season hits, I mean, we're not needing him to come in and be, that spot right away. He has time to kind of develop in there and learn some of that. We're not needing him to come in and be a starting threat right away. So, if he can develop and kind of play it out and figure out how to use his skill set against these offensive linemen, the higher ability offensive linemen in the NFL, then that's what we need. I like getting the kids some time in the box like they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I thought he played well. Going back watching his snaps specifically, everybody talks about that first step, and he does. He's got a wicked first step coming off the snap of that ball. But we didn't see it in this preseason game, although there have been reports out of camp that they're starting to install what the defense is calling the dog front. And this is a defensive package where there's one down lineman, which is Poe, and 4 outside linebackers. So you're putting Justin Houston, Tamba Hawley, D Ford, and then reserve linebacker Josh Martin out on the field all together at the same time in an obvious passing down to rush the passer. Now, that's something that I can I can wrap my head around, and can't wait to see, what it looks like. And from as I understand the way it's set up is Tamba and Ford on the outside, Houston and Martin kicked in, and everybody just going all out for the quarterback.
Pittsburgh used to run a pack. I mean, a really similar deal with that, where they'd have nobody like down in a stance, and they would just move around positions and rush in. Like they would have a similar setup like that. And when you have that kind of pass rush, and it's like you have a 3rd and long situation, then the quarterback knows he's only going to have those 3 seconds to get that ball out.
Yeah, exactly. And if your secondary does what they're supposed to do and jam those receivers on the outside, you got a good shot at getting to that quarterback. So, overall, I mean, I got to give. I think preseason game 1, if we're going to put a grade on it, I'm going to give it a B. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from the quarterbacks, maybe a B-. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from our quarterbacks. Obviously the turnovers, Chase Daniel had the interception, and then, of course, Smith and Bray both had fumbles that were lost. But you can't, you can't look past the good that was shown on the field. The secondary needs to tighten some things up, but I think for preseason game number 1, overall, not too bad of an outing.
Yeah, no, not bad at all. Like I said before, the thing that it showed that we have that has always been a weakness of ours is the big playability, and we've had that in the preseason. We need, those 70-yard touchdowns. Like, you just don't see that. A lot of our scores last year were offensively were from the long drives, and when we can put some of that together, then that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, moving forward, putting that one in the rearview mirror, preseason week 1 is over with. Looking forward to preseason week 2. As I said at the start of the show, the Chiefs actually have a preseason game in primetime this week, Sunday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, and 5 Pacific on Fox Live, as the Chiefs will travel to the Carolina Panthers and meet them face-to-face. I think Cam Newton might actually be starting this game, which will be a good test for the Chiefs, I think, having a strong quarterback in Cam Newton, who can run and throw.
He likes to hold on to the ball. Yeah. Cam Newton's never been known for his, quick release. So, so a guy like that who likes to hold on to the ball for a bit, I'd like to see if we get after him on the pass rush a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point. Not only just the quick release through his receivers, but throwing the ball away when he sees a play is not there. He's definitely a guy that that likes to try to, kind of a Ben Roethlisberger type in that respect, that likes to try to extend a play with his feet, move around in the pocket, move out of the pocket, to try to find somebody open, which can be a blessing and a curse, because if our secondary can't hold and he can find somebody open, but I guess the hope there is that, the defense, our defensive pass rush will be able to get to him. So that should be interesting. Also interesting news in regards to this game coming out of camp, either today or yesterday, I believe it was today, is the fact that Alex Smith will be playing the entire first half of that game, which seems to be kind of Andy Reid's MO, to give his starting quarterback the first half, and then as well as I think most of the starters. But I would like to see some of these younger receivers get some time with some of the starting, with the starting quarterback to see what they can do. I want to see an Alex Smith, Albert Wilson hookup. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Alex Smith is probably drilling at the bit a little bit to go out there and show what he can do, and that this will hopefully be his chance. Those Carolina Panthers, their defense has always been pretty strong, so it's a good chance for him to show up, and if they play their starters at least for the first couple series of downs, then at least we might get to see something that would resemble what an actual start of the season might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what people want to see. They really want to see. With preseason, you just got to be so careful because you want to balance that. You don't want an injury, but you want to get everybody on tape, and I think that's, and you said Alex Smith is chomping at the bit, and I think you can kind of see that in his post-game presser after the Cincinnati Bengals game. He talked about the fumble. He said, "Look, it was my fault. I held onto the ball too long. We're not putting that on the offensive line. The quarterbacks need to get better." I think he said it during his in-game interview, that the same thing. So he knows. I mean, he knows that what the expectation is, in that. So. Still no word on his contract. I guess he did an interview with USA Today saying that he's not looking for something along the lines of the Kaepernick, Andy Dalton, type contract, the quote-unquote pay-as-you-go. He wants a reasonable contract for what he thinks he's worth, and he wants one that's going to, give him the most guaranteed money that he's actually going to be able to play all the way through, and not one that's really a 2-year contract disguised as a 6-year contract. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out moving forward. So.
Yeah, well, it's interesting for me too. We talked about the cornerbacks and the secondary, and I think this will also be a good test for them, just because if we can't do well against Carolina Panthers wide receiving core, we're in trouble against just about everybody else's, because they have a lot of inexperience, a lot of all new guys there. No one really knows the system well. They're running with a whole brand new set there. So, I mean, if we can't put up good numbers defensively against them, we're definitely going to be in trouble when we're playing people like Denver.
No, you're absolutely right. That's actually an excellent point. I think at one point there was not a single Carolina Panther receiver during the offseason that had caught a pass from Cam Newton last year. They literally retooled their entire receiving core. And I actually have the pregame stuff pulled up here. And what I'm finding interesting is looking at Cam Newton and Alex Smith's numbers. They're almost identical from last year. Cam Newton went 292 on 473 attempts for 379 yards and 24 touchdowns. Smith was 308 for 508, 33-13 and 23 touchdowns in one last game. So very similar quarterbacks. I think that the Chiefs' offense is going to find a good test against that Carolina stout defense. I mean, they've got some great defensive players there in Carolina. And then, like you just said, Chris, I think that our defense, hopefully they have an opportunity to shine against these wide receivers. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it'll go to show the level that they're at. If we struggle against those guys, then it might be looking like it's going to be a rough spot, but hopefully it gives them a chance, to get some wind underneath their wings and show what they can do.
Really, Bette Midler, some wind underneath their wings?
The Chiefs, the wind beneath my wings.
Did you ever know that you're my hero?
Yes, of course.
You're everything that I would like to be. All right. It's getting late. I've had a couple too many Texas Shiner box, I think. So I think that's where we're going to call it a night. Want to give a big thank you to our friend Sean Smith for calling in. Definitely looking forward to having him back on the show throughout the year and getting that pro perspective from Mr. Smith as the season progresses. Definitely want to thank you all for listening. Chris and I enjoy doing this show as much, hopefully, as you enjoy listening to it. If you are listening on Stitcher, make sure that you give us a good review, give us a thumbs up on that site. Same thing with iTunes. If you're an iTunes subscriber, make sure you are giving us a review and giving us a 5-star type look there as well. And then, of course, if you're just listening to us right off of our homepage there at ProFootballCentral.com, we appreciate that very much as well. Looking forward to watching the Chiefs play the Carolina Panthers this Sunday live on Fox, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. So make sure you check that out. Chris and I will be breaking it all down for you next week. For my good friend Chris Kilduff up in the Pacific Northwest, I'm Jason Seibel down in San Antonio, Texas, telling you keep it red, keep it yellow. Good night. Keep it Chiefs.